But we have to reach the point where we're not yet ready to die, but we don't really know how to live and survive um, in our lives before we will take the risk, really take the risk of doing something as radical as sitting down and doing nothing. That's radical.
And yet there is a kind of a death in that. You're letting some other part of your life go because it didn't work. And there is a kind of rebirthing experience in the act of sitting, isn't there?
Well, we say, and not to go too far, but, the reality is that that's happening all the time, no matter what. We're rising up and settling down, just if you consider on a cellular level. But, really, if we look at some of the ancient texts, the 1,000-year-old texts that really looked at the matter of what life is, it is not this straight line, this linear kind of, it's not fixed or static. It's changing all the time. And so that's something that we have to come to grips with. What we think our life is yesterday. Who we think we are, is not real and present at this moment where everything's changing so fast. But when we sit down, we are surrendering. Sometimes it's as simple as I'm going to surrender to my breath. I'm going to surrender to, my butt because it's going to support me. I'm going to surrender my attention deficit disorder to the timekeeper who rings the bell. Lots and lots of ways in which we remove ourselves physically from the driver's seat because we know we're already headed for a fatal collision. So we give up that false sense of control, which is already ruining our lives and is causing harm to ourselves and everyone else for something as simple as a quiet room and our breath.
Do you have to have a teacher to guide you through this process?
I believe so. And the reason for that is the very same thing we just talked about. We're all very skilled and practiced at making ourselves comfortable. Finding, quote, what do we call it? We call it our comfort zones. We'll say, well, I'm a morning person, or I'm a night person, or I, like to do this, or I don't like to do this, or this works for me and something else doesn't. But all of that is just the ego's talk, the ego narrative of fear, the voice of fear. I'm willing to go so far. A teacher always stands outside of yourself and your limitations. A teacher is always there. So sometimes the teacher is like you right now, in front of me, or your pet, your dog, your child, your boss. Sometimes that's the teacher standing outside of you, calling for you to go beyond your comfort zone, do more than what you thought you were able to do. But a teacher generally, when they are selfless, which is really the chief characteristic of a teacher, is that the teacher is selfless. It simply serves as a mirror for you. And so then by selflessly, in full awareness, sitting naked, as it were, without any agenda in front of you, you encounter yourself. You see all of your tricks and schemes and evasions. You see it. So it's really helpful.
You were saying a moment ago that we're all kind of leading toward collision anyway, and so there's this this aspect of giving up control that comes through the art of practicing and surrendering. I remember you saying something once about the notion of settling, someone said, but isn't that settling when I can come to accept this, which I can't control anyway, and accept that things are falling down and I'm coming to a collision anyway? Isn't that just settling? And this always struck me as so interesting. There was something in you that wanted to say, no, it's not settling, but why isn't it? Actually, it is settling, and what's wrong with settling? And is it pessimistic?
Yeah, I think I can. I don't know where you might have. It's a terror strikes my heart when somebody says, "One time you said," but it's settling. You see, we do.
I'm sorry to do that.
In our contemporary vernacular, settling always means settling for less. See, and those who are in the self-improvement business and in the marketing business or in whatever they're doing, will always tell you, that you deserve and, you have to strive and, never settle. And it really strikes us then as being contrary to ambition or, shouldn't we, and we sit up straight and it's kind of, don't I deserve and shouldn't I? But if you actually will look at the way, say a wave rises up, and then, of course, what's going to happen to the wave. It settles back down. Okay? It settles. Does that wave lose anything? Where exactly is the loss in settling? In fact, in Buddhism, we call the state of enlightenment, so to speak, which I hate to bring up because it's just another concept. But nonetheless, I'll say it is described as the settled mind of nirvana. What is nirvana? Nirvana is settling. Settling in its even, undisturbed state. You see, the earth by nature is settled. In its place, the trees are settled. They don't try to fly. You see, the ants are settled. They don't do backflips. Maybe they do, I don't know. But you see, everything is settled in its place, in its position, and functions perfectly. Only the egocentric mind, through its clever misapprehension of words, defines it in a way to feel like a lack or a loss.
Just another concept.
Yes.
As you know, I teach at the college, and like every other decade, we have a lot of social problems that people are concerned about. And as a Buddhist priest, I think you must get this a lot, what I got the other day in the classroom. How do you reconcile this business of sitting down to meditate and doing your personal work, learning how to settle and be at ease in your own life? Which starts on the cushion and you carry into your garden and into your role as motherhood and all the other roles that you play in life. How do you reconcile that personal work with doing the work that we do or that we're told we should do as citizens and as activists? How do we participate in the world in an active and useful way? And is there a necessary tension there?
There's no tension. Whose idea is it that one kind of activity prohibits or inhibits another?
Or comes at the expense of another?
When it's time to sit, you sit. When it's time to march, you march. When it's time to vote, you vote. Your life is your practice. Take care of what appears. Take care of what appears in front of you. And that is full engagement. When it's time to write a letter, write a letter. When it's time to visit with a friend, visit with a friend. When it's time to walk the dog, walk the dog. When it's time to say hello to your neighbor, say hello to your neighbor. Is that not citizenship?
That reminds me of a story that, and maybe this is an opportunity to ask you, who is your teacher? Because your teacher was my teacher. In the Zen tradition, the teacher is called a Roshi. And I remember someone asking Roshi once, but I have to have goals. Goals are what keep me alive, and it's what keeps me moving in life. And I have to go to law school, and I have to think of the future, because the whole emphasis is being here now. But I have to think of the future. Otherwise, how will I plan my life and go forth as a lawyer and get into law school and do what it takes to mobilize this whole thing? And he said, well, so How do you become a lawyer? You fill out the application. How do you apply? You send it in, and it was something like that that was so simple and so disarmingly simple. How do I fill out the application? You fill out the application. And I think we make more out of this planning and doing and even, into the activism part of living than maybe what needs to be. Maybe we're turning that into just another concept.
It's a sign that's so important that we see all the ways in which we blind and confuse and entrap, imprison ourselves just by the way we think. Our thinking is inherently dualistic, and don't get confused by that word. In our thoughts, things are good or bad. They're now or then. They're right or wrong. Our thinking divides the world into opposition. And therefore, we don't think that it's possible, to take care of everything. We think that if we sit, and so often you hear this, frankly, and these things all get under my craw. I mean, I really want to write a sermon about it, but this question of how irresponsible it is to sit in silence and turn and face the wall instead of, quote, engaging the world. But the reality is once I empty this container, I am totally engaged. Totally engaged. There is no separation, no divider, no wall, no gate between my life and the life of the universe. Everything I do either supports and enhances peace, harmony, compassion, or causes harm.
So just to play devil's advocate for a minute, I'm the student. How does sitting and facing a wall constitute engagement?
Because separation is an illusion. This is when it would really help if you took some of your kids who are the most hard-headed like that, or as my Zumi used to say, head heavy, just too smart for their own good, and suggest that before they take the Buddhism class, they take a physics class. Because in physics, they're going to take on faith, and they're going to memorize, and they're going to believe, and they will never object to the a physicist's view of the world, which is that this appearance, the way things appear in this form, is an illusion. This is energy. It's just all different wavelengths of energy. And just because it happens to appear right now like this, doesn't mean that this is what it is at its essence. And its essence, I mean, we study in 4th grade science, we learn about atoms and molecules. And we take that all on faith, but when it comes to changing the way, the iron-fisted way in which we, in which we experience our lives, we refuse to connect the dots. This is empty. This is space. Nothing here is fixed. This is an illusion. And so therefore, since I am energy and you are energy, your pets will show you this. You know that you'll have a worried, angry, negative, fearful thought, and your pet, am I right?
Absolutely.
Okay.
As a dog lover, I can tell you absolutely.
Okay. All right. So, do we think that's some special quality of the Schnauzer? It's like, no, this is really what's going on here. And I don't have to be, thankfully, I don't have to be a physicist. I can just be an idiot. But I can see for myself that my own thoughts, the agitation in my own mind, can cause my daughter to slam her bedroom door. I mean, at least I can take responsibility for it. If I have a tumbling, sleepless, fretful night, do you think there might be anybody else in the world who experiences that? I can guarantee you. That's how central you are. You're the only one there. You think what you do doesn't matter? So if I sit in repose, not contributing one scratch of discomfort, resentment, anger, disharmony, greed to this place, does that enhance life?
Absolutely.
There you go. We can't have these grandiose, you see what we think, oh my gosh, but I didn't build a water treatment facility, but I didn't, kind of distribute earthquake relief, packets in the Himalayas. Well, if I'm called to, perhaps I can and I will. I take a vow. My life of practice, my awakened life consists of taking care of whatever appears in front of me, wherever I am, and no matter how I feel about it. When it's time to raise my voice, I'll raise my voice. And when it's time to be still and quiet and bring peace, I'll do that. Not one moment inhibits the next.
Thank you for that. There's a Zen teaching. I think I'm the first one to put it in print, the DER acronym, the don't deceive yourself, don't make excuses, and take responsibility. And you just spoke of of taking responsibility and the many ways that we can take responsibility. And another question that I would like you to speak of along the same lines is this business of kind of falling into victim stance, victim consciousness. And we see that, I think that's one that gets my goat, and I'd like you to speak about that. We see that so often in people as they go along their own spiritual path. They have a hard time getting past their own blocks because they feel victimized. Or even people who aren't on a spiritual path. You just turn on the TV and you see it. You drive down the street and see it. People feel victimized. People feel entitled. People feel that they're blocked in whatever it is they're doing, spiritual or otherwise, as if there was a distinction. Because something has been done wrong to them. They've been wronged. And in this Buddhist teaching of taking responsibility, we're supposed to acknowledge our role in whatever it is that happened. What do you say to people when they say, but I really was done wrong? My people, for example, were victims of a genocide. And I personally, was abused as a child, or this or that or the other. You hear these horrible stories, and people have gone through horrible things. It's true. It's all true. But how do we take responsibility and acknowledge that interconnectedness that you were just speaking of, that there is no wall? We're all a part of it. And part of taking responsibility is acknowledging my role